Hello, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking all about my most anticipated romances of 2022. Super excited to be bringing you this video. I hadn't really considered putting it together until I read a book series recently and I realized the most recent book hadn't come out yet and I was disappointed. So I was like, you know what? I'm anticipating that book so highly. I need to put together a list of my most anticipated romances just like I did in 2021. This time I ended up taking a little bit more care with the books that I put on the list, and I feel like it's a really good blend of both indie and traditionally published romances, and I was pretty selective and definitely looked into the synopsis of the books before I added them to the list, at least for most of them. So I'm gonna go through the 17 most anticipated romances that I have of 2022. I'm sure there's gonna be more as the year goes on that get announced, but I feel like this is a pretty solid list and definitely gets us through like the midpoint of the year. So the book that made me want to make this list in the first place is Fallen Men number 7 by Gianna Darling. This book does not have a title, nor does it have a release date yet, but it is one that I'm highly anticipating anyway. If you didn't know, I'm doing a little thing called Chanmas right now, and it requires me to be pretty diligent about the books that I'm reading and stick to a really tight schedule, but I've kind of thrown my schedule out the window to read the books in the Fallen Men series. Like, I am so into this motorcycle club romance series. There's always like a taboo, age gap, forbidden thing in most of the books that I've read so far. I haven't finished the series yet, but they just really do it for me. I really love Gianna Darling's writing, and I have no doubt that this 7th book is going to be really awesome. I don't think it's even been announced like who the couple will be for this book, but again, I have no doubt that the book is going to be fantastic, and I'm so excited for this. So that's the first indie that I have on this list, and I hope you are as excited as I am. Next up, a book that does have a synopsis, does have a release date, does have a title, Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Now, I put this book on the list for a couple of reasons, the biggest one being that it is a sapphic, traditionally published romance, which I feel like we still don't see enough of, unfortunately, and then also Ashley Herring Blake is the writer, and I have absolutely loved all of the other books that she has published. This is her first adult romance, I believe, and I'm excited to give it a try. I actually was lucky enough to receive an advanced reader's copy, and I have this book slated for later in the month. I'm doing a video on one of the last days of the month that features this book, so you'll get to hear my thoughts on that one soon. But the story is about Delilah, who ends up having to go back to her small town that she kind of hates to photograph her stepsister's wedding. And while she's there, she ends up falling for, I want to say like a bookstore owner, and I'm excited to see sparks fly. I know that Ashley Herring Blake is really good at writing romance and also really good at writing stories that make you feel something. So I'm hoping that in an adult romance context, she's able to really blend the two into something that is really fantastic. I think this one comes out on February 22nd from Berkeley, and I am certainly going to be picking it up, like I just said. Another queer romance from Berkeley, I'm So Not Over You, is one that I'm very excited about. This is a male-male romance, and it is a fake dating exes situation, which I feel like adds to the angst and tension of an already, like, you know, pretty angsty fake dating situation. Having the two main characters be exes, I think makes it a little bit more juicy, and I am really excited to read this one. I'm sure it's going to have, again, all the lovely angst and tension that I require of romance. And this one also comes out on February 22nd. So Made in Manhattan is a book that I put on this list, not only because of the beautiful cover and title, but because of the synopsis. I know, I actually did my reading and research for this video. This story is about our main character, Violet, and she has grown up on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. She's definitely high society, and she is asked to help her grandmother's friend's son Kane become adjusted to the big city. He's from Louisiana, born and raised, and he definitely doesn't fit in well with high society. And I think it's sort of an opposites attracts fish out of water romance, which I am a sucker for, and I am excited to see how this plays out. I'm hoping it has sort of like a Gossip Girl-esque vibe to it, with it being set in the Upper East Side. I mean, there are other stories set there too, but that's where my heart goes, you know, that's where my brain goes when I think Upper East Side. So excited to pick this one up. I also have an advanced reader copy of this book, so I will probably be featuring it in a vlog coming up soon, but I'm very excited about this one, and it comes out January 18th. Next up, we have a historical romance. It is the first book in a new series by Eloisa James, and it is called How to Be a Wallflower. I am really excited for this one because I really love Eloisa James's work, but I never really have a good starting place for her romances. I think I read like the 5th book in one of her series, and I was like, I don't want to have to go back for the first one. This one, I can go in and start with the first book in the series. It's about our main character, Cleopatra, who is being forced to enter high society by, I believe, her uncle, and she doesn't want to be married. That does not excite Cleopatra, so she ends up enlisting the help of a theater costumer to help her put together her, like, outfits for her coming out, I guess you could say. So she has really outlandish clothing put together, and somehow along the way she ends up meeting the owner of a bunch of theaters, I think. They end up becoming friends and falling in love. And that sounds really delightful. I love a good historical romance with sort of a different plot, and this one definitely seems like it's gonna fit the bill. I am very excited about it, and I really like Eloisa James's writing. It's, again, pretty different than something like A Tessa Dare, but I feel like that could be exciting and fun, and I'm excited to see how this one plays out and if Cleopatra is able to avoid marriage and romance like she seems to want to do. This one comes out on March 29th. Next up we have Circling Back to You. This is a book that I would probably not have picked up based on the title and the cover alone, but knowing this book was written by Julie Chu, I wanted to pick it up because I really liked The Donut Trap, which I read by her earlier this year. This story seems to be a friends to lovers fake dating story about Cadence and Matt, who work at the same realty company. And I don't know, that's kind of all I need to know. I like Julie's writing. I knew I would pick up her sophomore novel, and I really like friends to lovers and fake dating. It's like a match made in heaven to me, so I'm excited to pick this one up. It comes out July 12th. Next up, you know I had to put Emily Henry on this list, Book Lovers. This story, I don't know, I feel like it could go one of two ways. It could be something I really like or something I really hate. It's about our main character, Nora, who is a literary agent, and she's asked by her younger sister to go on a girls' trip. And on this trip, she ends up running into a nemesis, an editor named Charlie, and sparks fly and they fall in love or whatever. So it's like a semi-enemies to lovers sort of story, it seems like. But I think there's going to be a little bit more grit and or heart to this book as well. It's interesting. In the reviews, the early reviews that I've read of this book, there were only two from my friends on Goodreads. One said that this book is really like rom-com heavy. It's probably the strongest rom-com Emily's written to date. And then the other review that I read, the other review by my friend on Goodreads said this book is probably the least rom-com-y, definitely the most women's fiction-y book that Emily's written. So I'm gonna be the judge of that for myself. I was gonna read the book either way, but it definitely is super anticipated by me, and I want to be able to talk about this one at the end of the year in that context. Like, did it live up to my anticipation? So this one comes out on May 3rd. Next up is Set on You, which is a book that I put on this list primarily because I've never seen a romance that centers on weightlifting, and I love weightlifting. So, I mean, I don't really have to say much more than that. This is about a fitness Instagrammer, like fitness influencer, and she has been plagued by trolls for a while, and I feel like she gets a little bit of like negative publicity when she starts posting pictures with this new guy at the gym. It's a romance between her and the new guy at the gym who's like a little cocky and like a little bit not nice, and I don't know, it just sounds like everything that I want to read. I don't really care about what their relationship dynamic is purported to be. I just care that this is a weightlifting romance, and I have seen a lot of early reviews for this book, and it has pretty much all 4 and 5 stars from my friends, which I love to see. Very excited about this one, and it comes out May 10th. Next up is a no-brainer, Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book in the Bellinger Sisters series, the first one being It Happened One Summer, and this follows Piper's little sister, who is very level-headed, definitely not the kind of Instagram airhead that Piper was, and we get to see her friends to lovers relationship with Fox, who is Brendan's best friend that we learned about in the first book. I've heard mixed things about this book. Again, early reviews have already come out, but I am still excited to read it. I don't really care what the reviews say. I've heard that this one's maybe a little less smutty. I think that's the main complaint that people have, but I think knowing that has me tempering my expectations a little bit, but it's definitely going to be on my most anticipated list, and this one comes out March 1st. Next up, okay, please don't laugh at me, but Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I don't know, I have a complicated relationship with Colleen Hoover books. I read 2 books, and I was kind of like about her writing. I kind of hated one of the books, the other one I was kind of like into. I took a really long break, and then this year I think I was forced to read like 2 or 3 of her titles, and I enjoyed almost all of them. And then Mika said that this was her favorite Colleen Hoover book, and I was like, well, goddamn, I guess I have to pick it up now. This book is about Kenna, who recently got out of prison. I want to say she was in prison for 5 years, and her main goal is reuniting with her 4-year-old daughter, but it seems like no one really wants to let her reunite with her daughter, which I think is the main conflict of this story. And the only person she is able to find solace in is local bar owner Ledger, and I think he also has some sort of connection to her daughter as well. And just from that description alone, I'm sure this is going to be a really hard-hitting romance, but it is categorized currently on Goodreads as a romance, so I'm hoping that that is really where this book falls. It's so hard to tell with Colleen Hoover. She tends to really straddle genre lines, but her books that tend to lean into the romance I tend to prefer. So I'm hoping that this is a good book. I'm hoping that I enjoy it. I tend to trust Mika's recommendations for the most part, so I'm excited about this one. surprisingly. And this one comes out January 18th. Next up, we have another book with no release date or cover, Motel by Penelope Douglas. This is one I feel like that we all know a little bit about if we've read Birthday Girl. There is a motel in that book, and there are some characters that we get introduced to, and this is going to be a romance between, I think, the girl that works the front desk at the motel and one of the patrons of the motel, and it's supposed to be a standalone contemporary romance, not a dark romance, which I'm excited about. I feel like it's been a while since I've read a Penelope Douglas book that isn't kind of dark, so I have high hopes for this one, and I'm very, very excited to read it. It does not have a release date, but it does say that it's slated for 2022, and I will be picking it up when it does come out. Then we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This is a book that when I first looked at the cover, I was like, this doesn't really seem like something I'd be into. But then I was like, okay, Catherine Center, how do I know that name before? Where do I know that name from? And I realized I had read a couple of her books. They're like women's fiction books, and I actually really enjoyed the two that I read. And this seems like it's gonna be her first true contemporary romance, and I wanna see how she does it. This is actually a very interesting story too. I read the synopsis and I was like, okay, I can get into this. It is about a female bodyguard. She is guarding a guy who I don't think we really know his profession, but he has a stalker right now, and our heroine bodyguard is protecting him. And she ends up having to fake date him because when he goes to his town to take care of his sick mother, he doesn't really want to explain to them why he has a bodyguard, so the easiest way to kind of trick them or fool them is to pretend that they're dating, and they fall in love, I think. I mean, it's a romance, so I would assume that they would. And this just sounds delightful. I like when tropes that are in romance kind of get turned on their head, and the idea of having a female bodyguard sounds really delightful, and I'm excited to see how this story is executed. So this book comes out on July 19th. Next up, we have another indie romance, Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. I am excited for this one. I won't lie, I loved the first two books in the series, even though like the heroes are a little too alpha for my liking, even though the plots can be a little ridiculous. There's just something about her writing that is so captivating, and I really like the way that she writes smutty scenes, I won't lie. This is going to be an enemies to lovers story between Jules and Josh, I believe. They're two characters that we learned about previously in the series, and I'm signing up for every book in the series. Like, I'm gonna read them all, and I'm excited about it. This one is slated to come out January 27th, and I'm just excited to see Anna Huang's take on a traditional enemies to lovers book. Next up, we have a book that I found in my research deep in the Goodreads list world, and it is called Praise. This book doesn't have a cover yet, but it does have a synopsis, and it is an age gap romance between boss and employee, and the heroine's boss is actually her ex-boyfriend's father. So, you know, I was signing up for that. It seems like this is going to definitely be a forbidden romance. It does seem like there's also kind of a kink element to this. The synopsis of it gives me Secretary, the movie vibes, so this just seems like everything that I'm gonna like. I've never read anything by this author before, but one of my goals for 2022 is to read more books by indie authors that I've never read from before. I feel like I tend to just get stuck reading one author in their entire backlist, which, you know, we love to support one person, but like, I want to broaden my horizons, and I'm excited to do it, hopefully with this book, which comes out on March 17th. Another Penelope Douglas book, Falls Boys. This follows the children of the Fall Away series characters. This first one, it seems like, is going to be a semi-enemies to lovers story between a bully, like mean girl, wrong side of the tracks heroine, and the kind of like good boy, upstanding citizen hero. I feel like I never really read books like this, and if I have, they're usually not done very well, but I think Penelope Douglas has the ability to make this work for me. I don't know, I feel like bad girl romances don't tend to really do it for me, but I'm excited about this one, and it is supposed to come out March 21st, and I'm really, really hyped about it. Next up, we have what I'm considering to be one entry, but is technically three. It is the three novellas that are coming out by Ali Hazelwood in May, June, and July. They are all kind of like STEMinist is what they're calling them. They're these like feminist STEM novellas that are kind of in the same world, I want to say, as The Love Hypothesis, and definitely the same vibes. But since Ali Hazelwood is so good at writing these sort of like fanfic trope stories, I feel like these novellas are going to be perhaps a little bit smutty, and maybe will be something like short and sweet to read between some of the longer stuff that I'm sure I'll be reading next year. So I'm definitely anticipating all three of these. I briefly read all of the synopses, and it seems like there is going to be like tropes in there. Definitely some good enemies to lovers stuff, which I'm excited about. And then lastly, we have Ruby Fever by Lona Andrews. This is the third book in the Catalina Alessandro part of the Hidden Legacy series, and I'm excited to see how their little trilogy ends, and I'm hoping that we get the Youngest Sisters trilogy after this. But this is a highly anticipated book for me and a lot of people, I'm sure. This was supposed to be published, I want to say in 2020, and it has gotten pushed back a couple of times. It's supposed to be coming out August 23rd of this year, and I mean, it's set in a magical Houston. I'm from Houston. I'm all for it. I've already read the other books in the series too, so it's not just like I'm going off of those two things, but it is a book that I'm very excited about personally. So those are the 17-ish books that I am most excited about, most anticipated on my list for 2022. Like I said, I think this list might grow as the year goes on, but I'm hoping to check in with y'all in December of next year on whether or not I've read all of these books and what I thought about them when I do read them. So thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your most anticipated romances of 2022 are. I'm looking to add to my own TBR, which is probably a little silly because I have way too many books to read next year, but I still want to know what y'all are looking forward to in 2022. Let me know any books that I missed, but thanks so much for watching. I love y'all so much, and until tomorrow.